Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, check out the latest novel by a well-known award-winning author, Mia Motion Zia, of No Time for Love, called Missing, an extraordinary relationship between two ordinary people based on real-life events that go through 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion, and the ones you love would be the first to go missing. Check out the book on Amazon and other retailers, available on all formats today. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com and over 30 podcast platforms, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, Amazon Audible, coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn, and worldwide on Geo7, Radio Public, Himalaya, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful gentleman from Beaufort, South Carolina, and he is the former mayor of Beaufort, and he recently stepped down after a 12-year run, and he's got some fantastic stories, and he's practically lived there all his life, and also has a book called Sharing Common Ground, Promises Unfulfilled but Not Forgotten, with Mike Greenlee, who I had on the show as well too, and of course, Mr. Keyserling had been a 3-time mayor of Beaufort, and he also shares stories of a successful southern city in today's politically divided world. And what are the goals here to minimize racism and everything else, and reduce, and of course, how to establish common ground? Well, live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Very Plus Studios in beautiful downtown Beaufort, South Carolina, the former mayor of Beaufort, South Carolina, the terrific Billy Keyserling. Mr.
Wow.
Very good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining
Was
us.
that a eulogy, man? I'm 48 hours out of being mayor, and I'm delighted. It's being mayor is the highest honor of one's hometown, is the highest honor anyone could want. Doing it for 12 years was fabulous. But sometimes, you think, well, there's probably someone out there with piss and vinegar and a vision and excitement who's younger, who was where I was 12 years ago. And I line that with the fact that I still have another project I want to do. It was the right time. So a fellow who I mentored and love, who is a hard worker, smart as he can be, is the new mayor. And now I get to focus a little more on my own moral compass, and things that have mattered to me throughout my life that are really not part of a city's business. They're part of a city's way of life. But in terms of leadership and policy, a small city doesn't really deal with some of the deep problems that our country faces. We have to deal with the day-to-day public safety of our people. So, we did capital projects, we did major intersection improvements, we redid our whole gateway to the city, we built a new city hall and courthouse, we built an extension to our wonderful marina, a day dock, so that you could park and go downtown. We live right on the intercoastal waterway. We are in the midst of a major stormwater sea level rise project. And you go, wow, okay, now, what about the soul of the country? What's happening to the soul of the country? Why are we today so divided? Why are we so ugly to each other? Why are we continuing to treat people, to brand people, to hide behind labels, rather than finding a starting point, a point of discussion? A good friend of mine, Congressman Jim Clyburn, who obviously has been very visible lately as the majority leader in the majority whip in the U.S. House of Representatives, once told me that when he walked into the House of Representatives, he saw 434 faces. but he didn't really know these people, and that he knew that he is nothing more or less the sum of his experiences over his now almost 80 years. And that if members of the Congress would take time to sit down and get to know each other and understand where they were coming from and how their ideas were formed and the people they represent and what their values were and what their visions were, that the Congress really might get some work done. But right now they hide behind labels. They hide behind party leadership, and they're not really free to be who they are, say what they believe. Or maybe the country just doesn't want that kind of leadership, but I think it does. And so, now that I am not mayor, I am free to pursue something that's been part of my life forever, and that is systematic racism, inequality, not only for African Americans, but just as bad, if not worse, for women. And of course, each immigrant group, as it's come into this country, has been divided. And so you go back and you look, and if you look in the history of the Reconstruction era, most people don't know this because these stories have never been told. They've been hidden, ignored, denied. Reconstruction and the Civil War is called the lost cause. That's not true. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, freedom, citizenship, the right to vote, were all established during that short period called Reconstruction. But when, instead of allying themselves with the poor white tenant farmers, whose situation wasn't very different, um, many of the African Americans became quite successful. They were elected to Congress. They were lieutenant governors. They were U.S. senators. Over 2,000 were elected. They were successful in businesses. They started 16 traditionally Black colleges and universities. They were inventors. They were research scientists. But we don't hear those stories. We don't know those people. And children growing up, white or Black, don't know that story. But of course, there was a backlash because that poor white tenant farmer was threatened by the Blacks rather than joining hands in an economic partnership to better the lives of all. And then became the systematic demonizing of African Americans. They rape our women. They steal. They cheat. They're dirty. They're dumb. And so, it's a pattern that we've seen. But if we can go back and we can learn those stories and undo, peel back the teachings of three generations, get to the core of the problem. Look, everybody's got answers. There's reparations. There are different kinds of educational programs and scholarships and equal opportunity. Those are band-aids. They cover the wound. They stop the bleeding for a while. But until we drain the poison from the soul, we can never come together and fulfill those unfulfilled promises of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Hmm. And what are examples of trying to establish common ground from your eyes?
Well, I think it really starts. It's not something that happens fast, but I once had in a campaign. This story may be a little long, but I think it's very telling. I served in the state legislature, and redistricting took away the district that I had. That was about 50-50 Democrat Republican. They made it solidly Republican. The Republican leadership came to me and said, switch parties and you can stay. And I said, well, who wants to stay here forever? The Democrats sort of took me for granted. The Black Caucus was positioning, trading votes for advancement, which is understandable, wanting safer districts. And so I said, I got two choices. I can walk away, or I can show those son of a guns that we can create our own rules. So we don't have independent status here. We have an opportunity to be a petition candidate. So you basically knock on doors and get signatures, several thousand signatures to get placed on the ballot. So, here I had a whole new constituency, much more, quote, conservative than I. But I figured, they're human beings and I'm going to get to know them and they're going to get to know me. And somehow I'm going to win, even though all the odds were no. So one day I was out and I was going into a mobile home park area, mostly white, mostly hardworking men and women. And I said, I'm going to take my motorcycle. So I rode my Yamaha that day. And I rode up to a house where I saw a Harley in the yard. So I knocked on the door. Of course, while I was waiting for the answer, I saw a pickup truck. And on that pickup truck, there was a "Don't Kill Babies" sticker. There was a Confederate flag hanging on the whip CB antenna. And there were guns in the gun rack. And I said, oh my God. So the man came. I said, my name's Billy Keyserling. He said, I know who you are. And I wanted to sort of hide myself because I knew he was hostile because he thought I was some liberal kook. And because someone told him that, he didn't know that. He didn't know me from Adam. So I just was honest, speak from the heart, tell the truth, own your mistakes. And I said, I'm your representative. I'm going to be running for reelection. I see some differences we have on your pickup truck because you have a bumper sticker that says "Don't kill babies," and I think the issue there is not about killing babies. It's not about really being for or against abortion. It's about the role of the government. Should the government really go into your bedroom? Should the government get between a husband and a wife or a partner and a wife and a doctor? I mean, who am I? Because I get elected to the legislature to intrude on your life. So, well, he's, here comes a liberal. He's nothing but a Planned Parenthood friend, and he disagrees with me. So I said, and now I see the Confederate flag. I voted for that flag to come down off the state capitol, not because I don't recognize it, but first of all, it's the battle flag, and it didn't go on top of the state capitol until the 1960s, and it went up in opposition to desegregation. So it has a history. It is important. It should be folded, ironed, and displayed in a museum to tell us what it was like and how people felt about desegregating the schools. But it doesn't need to be flying on the Capitol and not flying in the face of people who misunderstand it. And he must have had a football game going or something because he was ready to go back in the house. And I said, my father was a country doctor and he was always helping the poor and he was never home. And he didn't have opportunities to teach me to hunt, which many people here do, or fish, or go camping. So I've never owned a gun because it's a sport. And I see you've got the guns there, and you know what? That's part of what it's like to live in a rural area where people hunt deer and quail and duck, and some to feed their families, some for sport. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. I don't have a problem with guns, but I think that as an adult, if I own a gun and a juvenile gets that gun and hurts somebody, I'm a criminal because I allowed that to happen. But he's really ready to go inside now. And I just want to sort of crawl out of my skin under the deck or something. And he says, okay, enough. We've had a good visit. I know who you are. And I said, let me just say one more thing. And then I promise you, I'll let you go back. I said, I see you have a Harley. And I have a rice burner, a Yamaha.
Rice burner. I haven't heard that term in years.
I probably haven't thought about it in years, but I remember it from that story. And I said, before I'll ever vote, to make you or me wear a helmet when I ride that, I'll vote first to outlaw fried chicken because more people die from heart disease than they do from head injuries on motorcycles. And
Really?
he sort of chuckled, and he tried not to smile, but he did. And I said, "Well, thank you. I've taken enough of your time," and I left. Of course, I raced over to a friend's house to drink a couple of beers to calm down after my first outing in this new constituency. A couple of weeks later, I'm walking down the main street in our little town, and I see him across the street, and he starts crossing the street, coming to me. And he said, "You remember me?" I said, "How could I forget you?" He said, "Well, I just want to tell you something. Across the street, I want to shake your hand and tell you I'm going to vote for you." And I said, "What?" He said, "You're the only politician who has ever been totally honest with me.
Hmm.
And that in itself makes me trust you, even though we may disagree." Well, that's a good example of finding the common ground. And that is, I just laid out our differences, but I knew that we both loved our helmets, and we loved our motorcycles, and we loved the breeze. But it gave me an opportunity to let him really know who I was. And I've gone through and been very successful, fortunately, in government, because I see it as people relating to people looking each other in the eye like we are now, not turning the other way, not hiding behind a label. And as a mayor, I had to calm down a little bit who I was and begin to listen. Being mayor is not coming up with a great idea and then forcing it down your council's throat. Being mayor is good idea. As having a good idea, finding a council member or two who want to take ownership of it, encouraging them, and helping them sell it to the rest of council.
Hmm.
That way everybody wins. Nobody loses everything, nobody gets everything they want, but they've had a fair chance to talk to each other, they've exchanged ideas, and they found that little core, which again is common ground, and then they built on that. We always talked about the what, we never talked about the who. We didn't take it personally, and we remained civil. And 99% of the votes over 12 years were unanimous. There
Wow.
was somewhere where we didn't come to an agreement, and that's fine. Fortunately, those who disagreed with the majority who were going to vote against him usually called me the afternoon before the meeting and said, "You know where I'm coming from?" And I said, "Absolutely." And, go for it. Maybe you can convince others to change, but stand up for what you believe. We've been through our process. Everybody's had a chance to be heard, and you're here to do what people elected you to do, not what I want you to do. So, too many people think you lead with your mouth. I believe you lead with your ears. And by leading with the ears, by listening to other people, you can pick up where they're coming from. You can get to know them, as opposed to getting up there and having a talkathon and boring everybody, or ramming something through. So those are lessons. But I grew up, in a different kind of situation from many people in the rural South. My grandfather was and I talk about this a lot in the book because the moral compass is so important. Was an 18-year-old running away from the czar, ended on the Lower East Side. He escaped under a vegetable cart, and got into Western Europe, made his way to New York. No money, but got to the Lower East Side where many of the Jewish immigrants, all of the Jewish immigrants were landing, and said, "I want to be a farmer." So he started pedaling his way south and ended up in rural South Carolina, luckily, a beautiful, beautiful coastal town, and went to work in a cotton gin, and eventually was the president of this company, which was a collective of private farms, black, white, large, small. and he organized buying and selling cooperatives for them. But he grew up around black people. My father grew up on an island in his early years, an island where there were 10 white families and 10,000 African Americans. And then my father's medical practice was always focused on taking care of those who would not get health care. There was no Medicare, there was no Medicaid, there was very little private insurance. People weren't suing doctors. Things were just very different. And then throughout my life, through school and I just was always aware. I never realized until later in life what a privilege it was to have had the kind of exposure to be in the homes of people who didn't have indoor plumbing, or who didn't have potable drinking water, or who didn't own cars, who would walk with 5-gallon jugs of water, fresh water for drinking and cooking. And first job out of college was registers around the country, and that took me into a mode of civic engagement. And so then through these various experiences, I built on the moral compass. And so now I'm 72. I've done my service, and now I'm honing right in on that compass. I'm free to speak as an individual, and I'm building a movement to raise people's awareness that they're untold stories, that if we can get them on the table, which is almost like sucking the poison out of that broken soul, then we can get along better. We'll see what we have in common. I can tell you that there are a lot of working people, there are a lot of women, there are a lot of ethnic groups who have so much in common, that the power structure above has done such a good job of keeping divided, while they have tax breaks for the rich and nothing for the poor, where they have such tax breaks that the upper echelon has more cash than they know what to do, and they start manipulating the stock market. But they only accomplish this by dividing us consciously. But we've been taught that for 150 years, starting with the Jim Crow movement, where blacks were demonized because they were successful. Of 1,200 African Americans who served in public office during Reconstruction, my cursory look shows me that more than 50% of them were charged with some sort of a crime. Very few of them were ever convicted, but that was a way to undermine the fact that others were succeeding. And when someone else succeeds, we've been taught, then maybe if you get something, if I've been eating a whole pie, and all of a sudden someone says, they just passed a law, Billy, Mike gets half of that pie.
It depends. First of all, it depends upon the pie. And if it's
That's right.
if it's pie that I don't like, you can have it. But something that I do like, then we'll have a discussion. How's that?
Okay. Well, we talked before about pies, about the common ground in pizza pies. You like anchovies, I don't. I like sausage, you don't. So what do? We make a half and half, but we still can sit and eat pizza pie and get to know each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. And of course, have a drink or whatever it is, and everything like that. And we'll talk more about that along with pizza pies, social media, and more. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, check out the latest novel by well-known award-winning author Mia Motion Zia of No Time for Love called Missing. an extraordinary relationship between two ordinary people based on real life events that go through four countries, two strangers, and one target, where truth is an illusion, and the ones you love will be the first to go missing. Check out the book on Amazon and other retailers, available on all formats today. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com and over 30 podcast platforms, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and Apple. And also coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, TuneIn, and Pandora, and heard worldwide on Geo7, Radio Public, Himalaya, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with the former mayor of Beaufort, South Carolina, Mayor Billy Keyserling, here on the Mike Wagner Show with the book Sharing Common Ground, Promises Unfulfilled but Not Forgotten, also written with Mike Greenlee here on the Mike Wagner Show. And, before we got off on, talking about pizza pie and also splitting in half, and just one question I have before you continue with your point. Do you think social media today is further causing a bigger divide, or do you think social media today is bringing us closer?
I was just thinking, I've been doing a lot of talking. Maybe I ought to ask you that. Now, do you use your social media, which is what you are? You're a new, to many people, form of transmitting and information. But from listening to your looking back at some of your shows, you're actually using it to bring people together. You could be using it to divide, but you pick diverse people with interesting subjects. And so I don't think so. I get bored. Maybe others don't, with all the there's too much chatter and the Instagram and the short comments. But using the social media to be able to actually bring people together, where you are, where it's cold, where I am, and it's moderate, but it's going to be warm for the weekend. I can go out in my boat when you put on your snowshoes. The fact, I mean, it's rather amazing what one can do. It's amazing that each of our 5 city council members can be at home, yet there can be 16 faces, 5 members and senior staff and guests who can even come to our council meetings, be on the screen with us, and broadcast it through our Facebook page. So it can be a very useful tool. Is it abused? Yes, I think it is, but I think everything's abused. I think that the traditional news sources, I mean, if you look at what happened, I only wish I could bring back Walter Cronkite. I really wish that the news was someone there who I could really trust, who had no bias. But to the left, to the right, it's become entertainment because it sells advertising, which generates revenue. And that, I was once at a major, I won't mention the name, but one of the top, let's say, newspapers in the country. And I had the good fortune of being invited to what they call the 4 o'clock meeting. And at 4 o'clock, all of the different editors sit around a table and they pitch their stories for the next day's paper. And they rate them, and then they decide what is a front page story and what is not a front page story, or what is maybe not a story, or what's been missed, what's been overstated. But at this major newspaper, for which I always had a lot of respect, they picked a story. They said, this is a great story, but it's not written like a front page story. It's not sensational enough. It needs more than a sensational headline. So you got 30 minutes, go back, rewrite the story. It'll be on the front page if it sells newspapers. And that was discouraging to me. So, are the podcasters like you who are obviously very, very serious about it, who are building audiences, who are building followers, who are relying on you to give them information, are changing the world. And as long as it stays civil and respectful and not mean and hateful, if it gives people a reason to feel united and together rather than divided and angry, I think it's a fascinating medium that I certainly don't know enough about, but I think it's very important. But it takes a while for a 72-year-old to sort of understand, that there's so much information coming at you so fast from so many different directions. Um, it's almost refreshing to be able to sit and have a one-on-one conversation with somebody about things that matter. And
Mhm.
you don't get that anymore on television or in the newspapers.
And that
So,
and that's really sad too. And I've noticed a lot that the reason why I started the show is because I just got sick and tired of all the negative media, all the crap that's going on, and the put downs and the wars. And I'll be first to admit, I did not watch the last two president debates. Especially with Trump and Clinton and Trump and Biden. All they do is just throw mud at each other. It's like couldn't establish a common ground, and they refused. I mean, I just got so tired of it. And it's like
mm,
bring back Johnny Carson. It's like, entertain the guests. Guests can have fun. You can chat. You can just laugh. And of course, have a good time, especially when you go to bed. If you happen to be listening, watching the Mike Wagner show or talking to you like at 10:30 at night, you get a laugh and you just go to bed happy. So
you can't beat that, huh?
I
You
miss
can't.
those days. It's like I look forward to staying up and watching Johnny Carson when it's time to go to bed. It's like I can just go to bed with just a smile on my face. I can just go to sleep and sleep like a baby, not be fearful about what's going to happen next. I mean, oh God, I miss Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson, yeah, they. I hadn't thought about Johnny Carson in a long time,
Mhm. And of course,
but
he's a guy that really brings people together no matter what. And it's not all
mm,
about him; it's all about the guests. So he knows how to bring people together, and a lot of people come together. And also in your book, sharing common ground, there's also quite a people who know how to bring things together, and also make a big impact. And I think there was a guy named Smalls on there that came to Beaufort, and he ended up just making a big impact.
mhm. So, but I hope with the election over, well, it's not over, but it's over. Um, I think it's rather pathetic. I'm such an idealist that I go to bed at night thinking maybe Donald Trump cares enough about the people and about the institution of government that he would wake up one morning and say, okay, it is what it is. Um, Amen, so be it. And invite the Bidens over for dinner and say, let's shake hands. I was the president. I did what I could. You're going to be the president. I wish you well. And that's what presidents who've had bitter campaigns have always done.
Very
But it's now it's I mean now it's I mean the thought that I think 17 attorney generals, one of which is one from my own state, is going to try to are going to try to say the election is null and void, that it was illegal. I mean, come on, guys, come on. I mean, remember Al Gore? One could say he could have very easily said this election was stolen. I'm going to take it all the way. I'm not going to concede. But what did he do? He said, I lost. I didn't win enough votes. We tried. We got the chance to recount the votes. Now I wish you well,
true.
President Bush. That's the way it should be.
And John Kerry didn't need to challenge and say I'm going to sue, we're going to challenge the election. He just simply said I did what I could. He didn't put up a fight. He's just like just rode off in the sunset and said I wish you well.
Yeah, exactly. And we're owed that sense of dignity. We're not going and continuing to go around
Oh,
and
I think we have a special guest if somebody wants to come on board here. So
hey Paula, you want to come onto this podcast? It's Mike Wagner.
Hello,
You sure?
how we doing? Yeah, come on board. So we love having special guests on, and I'm not
I,
having
I,
a
I,
pet or anything. So if a dog or cat walks in, they're welcome to come on board. Or if somebody comes over, it's like they're welcome to come on board. It's like people are always welcome on the Mike Wagner show.
well, that's Paola. And when you want to talk about Italian cooking, or Italian thinking, or Dostoevsky, or she's a very learned woman who I'm fortunate to be with, and
And I'm sure she makes good pizza too. So,
she does from scratch.
oh,
But
nice.
since she's been in the South, she spends the winters here now that she retired as a teacher. She's even learned how to make good cornbread.
Ooh, you're making me hungry.
I know it is fabulous.
Oh,
So
it is fabulous too. And of course, you've been in local government for quite some time, and you were also held positions in the U.S. House and Senate, and also had did a number of things. Coordinated international human rights campaign to free the Jews from former USSR, worked in a private sector, and also ridden the state of nuclear waste, achieving equitable taxes, and I mean, just a lot of things. You think it couldn't be done. I mean, you actually did it.
yeah, I did.
Quite a bit.
I've been I've been very fortunate to find. I'm dyslexic, so I don't read very often because it's difficult. I spoke in a at a something that I spoke to a graduation in a state penitentiary where they have a high school, and it was a fascinating experience because I realized when I walked in the gate that I had never really been in a prison. I'd been in the county jail because my father would have patients there, and sometimes I'd go and sit in the lobby. And of course, I was young and afraid. Hold on one second. What? No, no, probably 20 minutes max. But
Oh, 20 minutes? Yeah, you got 20 minutes. Come on, make some pizza for us.
he's asking you to make him pizza. Okay, she doesn't want to.
It's okay. Next time when I have you on the show, we can do that too, and I can share you some of my pizza. You can share some of my pizza, but we're definitely 6 feet apart. I mean, social distancing, and then we can just eat like this here and have a little something to drink in the meantime.
That's exactly right. I'll have that too. We'll share some common coffee.
Oh yes, common coffee. What's your favorite kind of blend with coffee? I like the light roast, especially the breakfast blend.
I do too, but I'm not that particular. I'll drink coffee as long as I can put make it a little sweet, and if I can put vanilla in, it's a little more fun.
And it tastes good
But
too.
a big part of what we're doing to get back to the book or the common ground is we're focusing on helping 11 to 15-year-old students um, learn to ask questions, learn to find out about their past, where they came from, who their ancestors were, um, and then to use video, which we can make professional videos with this today,
Mhm.
um, or through visual art, sculpture, painting, song, dance, movement, to tell in their own language to their families and to their peers some of these stories. Scholars can do great work and they can uncover, but unless we feel it and unless we have it in a language that matters. So, a lot of our focus is to build a network of teachers across the country. And, through videos of the national park, which we created, the Reconstruction Era National Historical Park, which is now aligning related sites across the country that have Reconstruction stories, to build this network of teachers through project based, experiential, arts infused, whatever you want to call it, education, and then to create a grassroots movement to say, why do we have African American history? Well, we have African American history because African Americans have not been written into the American history we're taught with very few symbolic gestures. So it's to actually create. We're planting the seeds. I have no illusions that we're going to get people to not be racist or come together fast. But one by one, each student goes home, talks to the family, begins to challenge the father who uses the N word, or challenge the mother who says, if you go to your white friend's house for the weekend, you'll get embarrassed or you'll do something stupid. These are all things these kids are taught. So if we can, before they're taught all of this, get them to understand the truth that we have not been taught, they will begin to chip away at it. And so that is, people say, well, how are you going to do this? You're talking about peace on earth. Well, it's not going to happen. It probably will not happen in my lifetime. But if we can plant the seeds, if we can get the stories out, if we can talk about them, every time we do that, we're draining a little bit of that poison that has eaten a hole into our soul. And as we continue to drain that out, by the end of the next generation, I think we might see a remarkably different world than we do. And this is not just the Civil War. And by the way, the Civil War, in my view, never ended. It's had its ups and its downs,
Mhm.
but it's raging in the headlines. And there's some people out there in the streets today carrying weapons, ready to go to war. I mean, how terrible that is.
I-
So, but working with the kids, the students, that's the way we're going to take on this subject
mhm.
very patiently. But I think we talk to historians about how can you take scholarly works and, for lack of a better word, dumb them down so that people who don't read, people who can't afford to go to museums, people who could never even afford to buy scholarly books or know to go to the library and check them out and read them. We've got to get them into real life stories. And if we talk about families, we talk about history, we talk about what our parents taught us because they were taught it, and we begin to peel back that 150 years of untruth. We're gonna get to the root of this problem, and we won't need the band-aids to stop the bleeding and cover the wound.
Hmm. And of course, you talked about the Civil War, which never ended, and the people carrying guns on the streets, which feels like a civil war. It kind of just a flashback, like what, 68, 69 or so, which was like, really happening. I mean, I was just, a peanut back then. And what if Martin Luther King were alive today, like saying he wasn't assassinated, what would he say today about today's society?
I think he would be very disappointed. Every year as mayor, I was asked, and when I was a legislator, to go and speak, just say a few words at the Martin Luther King annual celebration, be in the parade. And every year I remind people, I said, Dr. King, this would not be something that would make him happy. And I said, because, and they looked at me perplexed. I said, because we have reduced the memory of him to putting on a coat and tie and gathering one day a year to talk about his legacy instead of waking every morning and living the life and continuing the work that he was doing. And so, he was not. It's not a holiday. It's a change of attitude. It's a different way of looking at things. It's hope. In his case, nonviolence was a big part of part of his hope, and part of the sacrifice that he and many of the people who were with him, like the fabulous John Lewis, got beaten up pretty. Being nonviolent, they got beaten up pretty badly. But we can't just. It's not reserved for a day. You really have to find that moral compass. Again, I'm back to the book and how I'm aligned to be doing what I'm doing. Find that moral compass and realize we all have a personal responsibility to civilization, to look in that mirror every morning and say, okay, remember remember what I'm supposed to be. Remember what my mission is. Remember that I believe in civility. Remember that I believe that you speak from the heart, you tell the truth, and you're not embarrassed about making mistakes. Be direct with people. Look them in the eye. Physically, before the pandemic, even touch them appropriately. Many things. I don't know if you realize this growing up, but many of us are grown to sort of have a glass shield around us, where we keep our distance emotionally, physically. And I'm not saying that I go around feeling each other all the time, but the reality is I want someone to sort of pierce that glass every now and then and touch me and say I'm a human being too. And I do it as mayor. People who are with me get embarrassed when we go into restaurants because I will, to a complete stranger, as long as they look like they're having a good time and they're comfortable, I'll sometimes join them at their table and say, "Can I have a bite?" And they start laughing. No one has ever, no one's ever really denied me a that. They say, they do say, "Who is this man? And why would he sit down at my table and ask for a bite?" But then they laugh. They like the fact that I broke into their lives. I've never accepted a bite. Now I've had some 5-year-olds that when I asked them if I could have a lick on their ice cream cone, they looked at me like, "Don't you dare get near me." But that's okay too. But again, that common ground is just being human beings and having compassion and understanding, and listening to other people and feeling their feelings, sharing your feelings. And so, and that's how the whole book came about, is that I realized that we really can heal. We really can heal, but that we're very ill right now as a society. We're jumpy. We're walk on eggshells around people. We're afraid. We call people Trumpers, so we stay away from them, or they call us socialists, so they stay away from us. I mean, we have a responsibility to hold it together and to be one humanity.
And that's very important as well too. We're gonna wrap up the book with sharing common ground and what's coming up for former Mayor Billy Keyserling of Beaufort, South Carolina in just a minute. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look on a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support at SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, check out the latest novel by well-known award-winning author Mia Moshenzia of No Time for Love, called Missing, an extraordinary relationship between two ordinary people based on real-life events that go through 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and the one you love be the first to go missing. Check out the book on Amazon and other retailers, available on all formats today. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com and over 30 podcast platforms, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, Amazon, Audible, coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn. Also worldwide on Geo7, Radio Public, Himalaya, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with former Mayor Billy Keyserling of Beaufort, South Carolina. He just he served for 12 years on the Beaufort City Council as mayor. Has done a phenomenal job. His book, Sharing Common Ground, Promises Unfulfilled But Not Forgotten, with Mike Greenlee, is currently out right now. And just one more thing here, we'd love to have you back in 2021 and beyond as well too, and with some updates. And lastly, let's just sum it up once again, is that how can we fix these problems, and how can we share common ground, and what can we do to help?
Well, I would say, it's $14.95. Anything more than the cost of printing and shipping and postage is going to fund our efforts. It's not a business for me. But go to www.sharingcommonground.com. Read about the book. There are many, many, many. Dr. Eric Foner, the renowned historian, Congressman Clyburn, former Secretary of the Interior, Bruce Babbitt, all people we've worked with, will tell you why. A woman who's a PhD professor in Atlanta um, writes because she grew up on the Sea Islands, the descendant of slaves, and she and her siblings were able to buy back a piece of the plantation where they grew up. So, just even if you don't buy the book, go and read about it, because there are some very notable people, former Secretary of Education, who've read the book and say that, it really helps one begin to get an orientation. It's not a history book. I am not a historian. I think my facts are correct, but it's about aligning one's moral compass to sort of do the right thing and to be part of this world and to create a sense of community. Because, like it or not, we're all in it together. Let's make the best of it, and let's make sure we make it better for those who follow, the next generation.
And that,
So,
and that's very important as well too. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
who was the biggest influence in my career?
Yes.
I think, well, in a practical way, Senator Fritz Hollings from South Carolina. In 16 years, I worked on Capitol Hill. I ran his presidential campaign. I worked for him for a year or two, and then I'd go somewhere else, and I'd always come home to him. And he mentored me. He was a Southern, very progressive man, but was elected in South Carolina and had to keep a conservative South Carolina. But he walked a thin line, but he had such respect for the institution of the Senate, the institution of government. I once asked him, because he was very frustrated that they'd get bogged down, and he said, I'm a trial lawyer. I love the adversary proceeding, and where else can you have a more important debate? And who better than could you represent than the American people? And so, having worked for him off and on running his presidential campaign, even though we were at odds at the end, he still as one person. I could name a half dozen, but I think that in terms of understanding public service and gaining a respect for government and loving it so much that it troubles me so much. In his book, after he left, after many years in the Senate, he said, when I went to the Senate, we scheduled the Senate business. And when we were finished with that, we had fundraisers. Now I'm in the Senate. I just left the Senate. And that was, I think, 16 years ago. I just left the Senate, and we scheduled fundraisers, and we tried to fit in the Senate business. I just can't keep going that way. So, he left a very strong mark on me. Again, it gets back. I just keep coming back to this moral compass. It will steer me right. It will steer me right, and hopefully that will benefit other people. Hopefully, in reading the book, they will get an awareness of their own moral compass, maybe in a stronger way, and they will see what their role can be in coming together and finding common ground, building relationships, keeping this country together, growing it with opportunities for everybody, equal justice for everybody, opportunity for everybody. Grow the pie, make it big enough, don't fight over smaller pieces.
That is the most important thing, especially pizza pies. That's right. So very important. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point, Billy?
The best advice?
Yes.
Look in the mirror every day and say, what is my responsibility? What is my responsibility to the next generation? What one thing could I do today to help a young person not become a bigot, not become a hater, not become a fighter or a divider, but someone find that young person. And I run leadership programs as mayor, I did, and I'll continue to do it for young people, showing them the positive things they can do. There are too many kids on the street lost, and that's when they get into trouble. Unfortunately, it's a disproportionate number of African Americans. But if you go back and you look at what happened after they achieved freedom and how they were bludgeoned, you wonder, you know. But build up that spirit, encourage people, keep the conversation going. Don't take things personally. And I think that would be my advice. It doesn't always work for me. I'm honest. But, I once had, when I went to a special school because of my dyslexia, I had a headmaster who said, no matter how you feel every morning when you wake up, I'll never forget this. He said, get in front of that mirror and make yourself smile. If you don't smile, make yourself smile. He says, it will make your day better. And so that's why I always say, look in that mirror and examine and set your course for the day and keep in mind other people, not just what I want.
That is a very good point. I'll put a smile on my face and make sure everybody does as well. And what can we expect from you in 2021 and beyond, Billy?
What can I expect?
Yes.
I can expect that, we'll continue for a while to have deep division in the political arena. But I quite frankly think the public is I'm talking about something pretty controversial in the South about racism and acknowledging it, about Confederate monuments and telling Black people you can't take away their version of history. You just have to have a chance to tell yours. But I think people really want peace. I think they're tired. I think between the COVID, between the lack of political leadership, the division, the hate, I think people really want to take a break. And this will be our opportunity, I think. I don't think we can expect a new president or different members of Congress going to change the world. They're certainly not going to change it, but they can create an environment. And as a mayor, I created an environment in my city council that permeated the city because people saw how we acted. And so that's my expectation. I worked across the hall from Senator Biden when he was young, before he was married to Dr. Biden, who was actually the receptionist. And be honest, I sat in our reception area so I could look across the hall at her because she was beautiful. But known him for a long time, and he is not a mean person. He's not a partisan person. I mean, here's a guy who spoke at John McCain's funeral, Strom Thurmond's funeral, Fritz Hollings's funeral. He's just a decent guy, and if he can just have us all feeling a little better, a little more hopeful, I think people are really ready for that.
Mhm.
But I don't expect him to create magic. It's going to take all of us doing our own thing. But that's what I expect. I expect we'll feel better next year. I expect we'll have a vaccine. I don't know that we won't all be wearing masks because I don't think that's an overnight thing. It's been tough. A lot of people really resent it, but that's an example of not sharing common ground. You wear a mask to protect me. I wear a mask to protect you. But people don't think they should wear a mask because it's their civil right. Well, what about my civil right to be safe and healthy? So we got to break down those kinds of attitudes. Knock each other gently on the head, tap us on the shoulder, and say, "Wait a minute, guy. We share this air. You can't pollute my air, and I wouldn't dare pollute your air. So it's uncomfortable. It's difficult. You don't like it. You feel infringed upon. But what about those people who've lost family members? What about those doctors and nurses who put their lives at risk, the first responders who put their lives at risk? That's not a hoax. That's real. 250,000 deaths is real, And so, the vaccine, it'll be an interesting rollout. I hope it's very successful. But we're not going to all of a sudden get a vaccine and think this thing's over with. That's how we begin to contain it and control it in a way that supplements our masks and our social distancing.
And
But 21, to answer your question, is going to be a better year. I'll be here, and I'll guarantee you, if you invite me back here in a year, you'll still have that smile on your face.
and of course, knocking on the head too. You talk about knocking on the head. I remember a commercial that says, I could have had a V8, and that's something I could have, and many of us can have right now, knocking on heads.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's very good. Once again, we're here with the former mayor of Beaufort, South Carolina, Mayor Billy Keyserling, here on the Mike Wagner Show with the book Sharing Common Ground, Promises Unfulfilled But Not Forgotten with Mike Greenlee. You can find on Amazon and more. Billy, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely wonderful. Looking forward to having you again soon. Just keep us up to date. We'll continue sharing common ground. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book, Sharing Common Ground?
That's right. And they can find they can find us. Excuse me. They can they can find www.sharingcommonground.com. Learn about the book, learn about the movement. It'll refer you to our Reconstruction Second Founding of America website, which talks even more about what we're doing, and that is growing. We're going to have a mega resource center, a website that will connect every single resource we can identify through a channel, talk about social media and technology, but work with anything from the Smithsonian to a fifth grade teacher who's got kids who are teaching their parents about Reconstruction, so that a teacher can pull down off the shelf things to talk about.
And that's very important. Once again, Billy, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely great. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on in 2021 and beyond. Don't forget to keep in touch, keep us updated, and let's continue sharing common ground.
Thanks, Mike. Enjoyed it. You be well.